Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Welcome to tonight's show, everybody. I'm your host,
Throw
Nate.
horns, bitches. Throw horns.
Yeah, for the music. Go, go, go.
Hopefully I'm not the only one that does that.
No, I do that all the time. In fact, I did it during the intro.
I saw you do it. That's right.
Anyway,
I
obviously,
hope our listeners do that.
I'm joined tonight by Unclemarc.
Hey guys,
Yeah, it should be a fun evening.
did not get eaten by a bear on the canoe trip last week, so that's good.
That is good. That is good. Did you include that in the chat section for later? We can talk about how you were not eaten by a bear?
No, that was no. But now we know because
kind of
I'm here
That's a
and I'm
fairly-
not virtual Mark. I'm not a cloud-based Uncle Mark that Nate is loaded a script into.
a cloud-based Unclemarc AI. That would be.
I don't think anybody would want that anyway, so we're good.
You're probably right. I don't know that anybody would. I'm just going to stop there.
Yep, that's fine. All good. All good.
All right. It's been a couple weeks since our last show, just because that's how the schedule falls. Every second and fourth Thursday means that sometimes we get 3 weeks off in the middle when it's the end of a month.
It felt a little forever-ish.
It kind of did. So, anyway, we're back. We're glad anybody who's watching is watching, and anyone who's listening is listening. And we have kind of an off topic for tonight, just because I guess it's kind of related. That's the whole reason we're covering this stuff. But I kind of came up with this almost last minute because you all have to go and pressure Jason. Go find him on Twitter or wherever. I guess Twitter is pretty much it. Go find him on Twitter.
He's not on the Facebook, huh?
No, he's not on the face. You have to go tell him you want to hear his story because we haven't heard it yet. I mean, I've heard. I know it just because I've known him for so dang long. But
can I harass him on Discord too? He might pay attention.
Yeah, you could harass him on Discord.
Discord.
Yeah, he I don't know. I guess he's busy tonight or something. He couldn't make it. But we were gonna have him do his story tonight. But since he's not here, I had to come up with another topic. So we're gonna talk about side jobs. And what I mean by that is not like going out and starting a lawn mowing service, but I mean using your IT skills to make extra income, right? Now, I have not. I used to do side jobs on the side when I really needed the extra money. Mark, I know that you have a very strict the workday is over, work is over sort of policy now, but I assume that was not always the case.
No, I actually shortly after I got married and had very little money, I started my own small business called The Computer Guy.
Oh.
Even at business cards and stuff, yeah. And this was kind of a whole somebody, if they were having personal computer issues or, wanted to learn how to do stuff, I would charge hourly. This would have been in the 90s.
Not a bad time to be getting
prior
into
to
IT, right?
Yeah. And honestly, prior to that, like I think when I went over my story a few, God, was that months ago now, weeks ago, whatever. When we did the Ballad of Unclemarc, I believe I mentioned how I used to work with my dad doing computer stuff for him.
Yep.
When he had launched his own consulting gig, and that kind of went on. That went on through most of high school. When I got to college, I beyond just going to school at Rutgers, I also worked in the computer lab. So that was technically a side job.
Yeah.
And yeah, besides helping students who are having computer problems and loading the printer with green bar paper, we played an awful lot of Dungeons and Dragons and argued about Star Trek and stuff.
Sounds like a great
that
job.
really wasn't part of the job. Oh, it was fantastic.
Sounds like a great
We'd
job.
occasionally we liked it so much that those of us who worked there would go and hang out there when we weren't working, which would occasionally frustrate the students who just wanted to get work done.
Yeah.
We were pretty friggin' obnoxious, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I definitely throughout my high school, college, and then younger marriage time dabbled in the computer consulting stuff. Again, this was a time when people would buy personal computers and not really know how to use them. I also occasionally I had more than one rich parent who would buy a computer for their sort of spoiled child, and I would basically tutor them on how to do stuff on the computer.
There you go. It's not a bad way to go. I wonder if any of them.
Yeah, I'd make a ridiculous amount of money for that too.
I wonder if any of them turned out to be productive computing people, or if they just
doubt
used computers to look up porn on the internet.
No, they probably inherited their family business and like died of coke overdoses. I mean, these were the rich '80s kids.
All right. So anyway, the context that I'm going for here is, you've already got a successful career in IT. Assuming, I mean, for varying levels of success, right?
You have a career in IT.
You have a
the hypothetical job.
You have a day job in IT.
And we'll talk like our Pittsburgh friends. Yins have a job.
Yins have a job. Okay.
Yins have a job.
And you just want to make a little bit of extra money, right? So I compare working in IT just like any other skill, right? So if you're a welder or a fabricator, for example, and this is just another thing that I know, right? It's not that uncommon for you to do side jobs where you're repairing, people's trailers or you're, whatever. Or some even make art, right, out of metal, right? And then they sell it on the side just because either they enjoy it or they want a little extra money, right? Even though you can obviously make a decent amount of money as a skilled fabricator, right? Well, the same kind of goes for IT. If you're good at IT, you can make a decent amount of money in IT. If you really want to chase it, you can make a lot of money in IT. Right? And that's just the way it is.
Now, you're talking about welding, and of course, now I'm like lightly fantasizing about Jennifer Beal and Flashdance, and the song's going, and she's welding. But anyway, hi.
I don't know if I remember Jennifer Beal
It
from
it was a
Flashdance.
movie from a long time ago. It was
I
in the 80s.
I know of
You wouldn't have remembered it.
I
They
know
used to
of
play the music
Flashdance.
video all the time.
I don't know that I've
Yeah,
watched
she
it.
was a welder who wanted to be a ballerina.
Oh,
Yeah.
because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Boy, that's a sidetrack.
Aronami says that he doesn't know if he
I
ever confident enough.
Arinomi, let me tell you something. If you're ever that family member that when you're at your aunt's for Thanksgiving and they want you to look at their printer, you have you have plenty of skills to get money from people doing
Yeah,
IT as a side job.
and I guess
Please
we can touch on
do
this
not
as part of
do
the deal,
not
right?
underestimate the stupidity of the average American when it comes to computers or
Right,
whatever country you happen to live in.
right.
It's a little frightening how many stupid people own technology.
Right. So as I see it, there's a couple categories here. There's you can do like single task oriented work, like AKA consulting jobs, or like one off. You're paid to do a task and then that's it. There's part time jobs, like literally you can go work for a second employer for part of your day and work for a full time employer for the rest of your day. And then there's like your own self starting business, like Mark was just talking about, and like I did for a little while. Um, and I guess we'll touch on each one a little bit, right? So, um, kind of where I wanted to go was not necessarily like what jobs could you do or how you find them, although we can certainly touch on that. What I wanted to talk about first was because this is the thing I kind of wrestled with when I first thought about doing quote unquote side jobs is like what are the things you need to think about, say from your current employer or from other angles that we'll touch on in a second. Then we'll get a little deeper into like what jobs you might want to do. Right? I'm not here to give you ideas on how to start your next business or something, but anyway. So for me, I had these thoughts in the back of my head because sometimes I overthink stuff. Is it ethical? Like, is it ethical to take my skills and use them outside of my current employer? Now, here in the U.S., of course, there's nothing wrong with it, right?
Well, I think that depends, and that can change over time. I remember when I was young, uh, and so let's say this. I remember watching like episodes of the Flintstones, probably in the early '70s, and you're gonna be like, "Where the hell's he going with this?"
The
But
Flintstones.
I remember there was a point or two where Fred like needed to make extra money, so he was moonlighting.
Yeah,
And that
right,
was like scandalous.
right,
Like if Mr. Slate found out that Fred was moonlighting, he'd fire him.
right.
And the millennials today are laughing because some of them have 3 or 4 jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think ethical moonlighting when I was younger was not the typical thing. You had your job and that was pretty much it. And having a second or third job, I think, has become something that's probably a little more common nowadays. Um, as far as ethical, there can be a tremendous problem with that depending upon whether or not you are either directly competing with your employer
Yes.
or if you're in a situation where you are getting an unfair advantage based on your employer. Um, there are situations like where, like, imagine for instance, we work for Red Hat, right? Well, imagine how big of a conundrum it could be, for instance, if me as a Red Hatter ended up like doing some consulting work for an existing Red Hat customer and then me taking advantage of that without both parties being aware,
Right.
right? Like I could have inside access, inside information that it could get that could get really unethical really quickly. So I think if you're going to do if you work in IT and you're going to do work outside of your current company, first of all, make sure you haven't signed some sort of employment agreement that says I won't hold another position in IT
Right.
or in this industry as long as I'm employed. And if you don't have that, you got to make sure in a position where it's a conflict of interest. And if you do discover that, well, then you better back out of that really quick. And you might even the ethical thing might be to even, kind of fess up to your employer. Hey, I was starting some side work and I didn't realize that, I put myself in a situation where it was a conflict, and, just so this doesn't get stumbled upon down the road, here's here's what happened. And I'm no
Right.
longer doing this
It's
work.
better to
I
come
don't
out
know.
in the open about it than to
Yeah,
try to brush it under the rug and have someone find it
yeah.
later.
I realize I'm kind of doing a little bit of verbal diarrhea right now, but those are kind of my thoughts on some of the ethical situations I think you can come into in IT.
Yeah, no, and
Uh,
that's valid, and that's really I think that's what I had in mind when I wrote this. But then, doing it live, my brain shut off for a second there. So thank
there's
you for
also
filling in.
you could be in a situation. So this laptop over here, for instance, this is my work laptop. Red Hat pays for it. I use it for my job.
Hmm.
Um, I've occasionally used my Red Hat laptop to do, like, Boy Scout presentations or stuff like that. Now, is that a conflict? Am I misusing company assets? You know what? Technically, probably, although no one, I think, gives a shit. But by the book, I probably shouldn't do that. And Arinomi just kind of pointed that out in what he just said.
Yep.
Ethically, he draw the line where he's either sort of competing with his employer or using equipment or software or scripts that may be considered to belong to the employer.
Right.
Yeah. Are you
If you
you probably shouldn't use your stuff from job A to make money at job B.
Yeah, if you work in information security for some little infosec startup, and then you start your own little side business where you're doing infosec stuff and using the tools you use all day, right? Like then you got a whole lot of gray lines you just crossed, and that's just
If
like a
they're
very
if they're
like
company
specific
if they're
suggest.
company specific tools or
Yeah,
tools that your company paid for. Now, if it's open source software
yeah,
that just happens to be the same open source software, then I don't think that's so much of an issue.
yeah. But I
But
mean, like you're going after the same customers that your employer might right?
okay,
Like
well,
that's a
and that's
conflict.
that you're absolutely right. That does become a conflict.
Yeah,
I can assure you that helping neighbor with his personal computer for a couple of bucks an
right,
hour, not taking any business out of Red Hat's pocket.
right, right.
You know, or I wasn't taking business out of Merck. A lot of my side work was done earlier in my Merck career, or when I was at this other mail order computer company, and none of my side stuff ever conflicted with either of those roles or positions.
So the next point I had was, and this is related to is it ethical, is does it matter what your employer thinks of whether you're working on the side or not?
So that goes back to the Mr. Slate firing Fred for moonlighting.
Right.
Um, I think again. So here's where I think my stance on that would be. If I'm, let's say, my side business, I won't use an obnoxious MLM. I'll use Avon, right? Because my mom was an Avon lady. My
Avon's a
best
pretty
friend's
common one.
mom was an Avon lady, and they didn't used to be MLM, right?
Right.
Um, if I'm at work and I'm using my work computer and my work time to sell Avon, that's a problem,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm on my company's dime using my company's equipment for my own little side work. And the same thing can happen with side IT business. If I'm doing my Red Hat tabbing job and I'm taking calls or doing work for a side business, which I don't have right now because
Right.
I don't want or need it, then that's an ethical conflict as well.
Yeah.
Your
And
your
that's
your work your work time belongs to your employer,
yep. And
says
that's
Mark as he
exactly
browses Reddit at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
that's exactly the sort of trail that I wanted this to lead down, right? So up to a point, I don't think your employer has any business caring about what you do with your free time as long as it's your free time. And as long as you're
Exactly.
not conflicting with your day job, which goes back to whether it's ethical or not, because
Right.
it's not ethical to trample on your day job's business or use that as an advantage to drum up your own business, right? But if you're, in Mark's example, taking phone calls in the middle of the day, now I'm not saying like somebody calls you at 2 p.m. and you quick answer and that's it. I'm talking like regular abuse of your free
Yeah.
time at work.
Or someone calls you and you're like, all right, well, let me look at it tonight when I get home,
Right,
or are you free,
right,
next Tuesday?
right.
That's a little
Now,
different. That's like taking a call from my wife, or
right.
calling
So
for a medical appointment or something.
any of us that have a life outside of work have, I guarantee you, spent time on work's time not doing work because you had to go to the doctor or you had to make a phone call or whatever, right? It's when it becomes frequent that it becomes a problem in my eyes, right? And again, this is going to depend
Oh,
on your
yeah.
employer, right? I
Wow.
worked for, well, that little web host that I worked for. That guy was a freaking tyrant. If I'd have tried to have a side job that was even slightly related to the business I did all day long, he probably would have nailed me to the wall for it because he was like Mr. Slate.
We're giving Mr. Slate a bad name, but
Yeah, well, Mr.
I'm
Slate
I'm
was kind of a
remembering
tyrant.
Mr. I'm remembering Mr. Slate through probably 7 or 8 year old eyes.
Yeah, right. He seemed like a bad guy then. Maybe
Yeah,
we'd relate more with Mr. Slate now that we're
I
older.
might. I might.
That Fred Flintstone, he's terrible.
Flintstone. Yeah. So, um, yeah, and we're not even going to get into the discussion of, okay, in the IT world, how many hours a day are you actually really working? Right? Like, as you move up, like lower level jobs, like working in a factory, working in a restaurant, whatever, more assembly line or constant work queue. I mean, you're working all the time. As you
Yeah.
move into more white collar and IT and thinking work, how many hours out of 8 a day are you working versus how many are you staring at the wall, or reading something, or just trying to compose your thoughts? I maybe we shouldn't have the discussion now, because people might I might make true confessions that are embarrassing.
Yeah, no, so it's a valid thing, right? In my days in IT, or I shouldn't say in IT, in my days as a sysadmin at the college, even though I was in person in an office, out of an 8 or sometimes 9 hour day, depending on when I got there and when I left, um, there was probably a good 2 to 3 hours where I wasn't being actually productive, right? Either I'm
Oh, I
eating
was gonna
lunch or out
say
for a walk or whatever.
you had maybe 2 or 3 good hours a day, and the rest were filler,
Well, no,
or just
so
being present.
no, well, so to your point earlier, right? I had a lot to get done, right? So if I wasn't doing that stuff, as if I was spending 2 or 3 hours productive a day, then I would not be very productive. Period. Right?
Ah,
Unless
see,
I was just really good at it, right?
my job was, when I was doing sysadmin work. My job was to find the most efficient way to do stuff and
Absolutely.
automate stuff, so that I could get everything done very
Yep.
quickly
Yep.
and
So
spend more time reading about EverQuest.
yeah, and that is the goal of every sysadmin, right? But when
Yeah.
in circumstances where you have a lot to do and not a huge team, it sometimes is hard to just
Oh
find the
yeah.
time to
Oh, and
automate it, and that
there are
could
the
be a whole
days
other whole other
there are the
show.
day yeah there are the days when it's, foot to the floor,
Yep.
throttle wide open. Yeah, but those days are not. If
Yeah.
that's every day, you're doing things wrong,
Yeah.
or you're severely understaffed.
But I mean, to your point, as you move further up, and I don't even mean into management because I know managers that are so much busier than I am today,
I
so much
I think
busier.
some of it's self-inflicted,
Yeah, I
but
know
that's just me.
maybe they just seem so much busier. But anyway, um, but you're right. As you get into more of a role where you're less hands on and more, sort of thought based, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. Sort of like our roles, right? You
Yeah,
get you
I'm
get a lot
basically
more
Dr.
leeway.
House.
You get a lot more leeway for either staring at the wall
What
or
appears to be not
improving
working, but
yourself.
in fact
Yeah,
you're really thinking. But
yeah.
we're off topicing
We are a
here.
little bit off topic, but anyway,
So
so the point is like even if you have that quote unquote free time during the day, it is still your employer's time.
it
And at any
that is
moment,
correct.
that
No
employer
argument.
should be
And
expecting that you will be productive for them and not conducting
right,
your side business.
right. Because when you're in IT, either when you're the sysadmin or people like us who support huge organizations,
Hmm.
like, yeah, maybe it looks like I'm sitting around, but within the next 10 minutes, a major company whose name everyone on this podcast would recognize might be calling me in a panic because shit went down,
Right.
and I'm going to help them. I'm going to help restore their business, and they're losing thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars every minute or so.
Right.
You know, that's when you really earn your keep. So so I think I think we've drawn good ethical lines here. And
Yep.
you know what? If you're if think about it this way, like if it's the kind of thing where you could tell your direct manager, yeah, I've got this little IT business on the side. I do this stuff on weeknights or weekends and I make X amount or whatever. If you feel you could tell that to your manager and they wouldn't give you a hard time about it, it's probably ethical.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably
That
a good
that
rule of thumb. If you feel
that's a
like
good
you
ethic.
don't have to make it a secret, then
If
it's
you feel like you
probably
don't have to
fine.
hide, yeah. But let's talk about some of the things that are an argument against side work, the things to consider.
Right. So I'll tell you. So we've already heard some of Mark's story. Personally, I've done consulting on the side. I've done. I ran my own business on the side, right? And those are I ran this little web host, and I told you guys about that. I think when I did my backstory, right? And that spanned a couple years. The consulting thing or the side work in that it was actually working for an old employer as I had moved on to a new job. Um,
Hmm.
there's things that you need to consider when you're dealing with those things. One is if you work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever, right, and you have all the stress from your normal workday, and then at the end of the day, you punch out from there and you start doing a second job, whether that's a part time job or consulting work or an extra business that you're doing on the side, even if it's unrelated to IT. Um, unless that second job is somehow therapeutic to you, like some people do arts and crafts as a second job because they find it to be a de stressor from their day job, right? And then they sell that stuff to make a little extra money. But if you're doing IT on the side, it may be just as stressful as your day job is, right? And that's a thing you really need to think about because you get vacation time from your day job. You may not get vacation time from a side business. You may not get vacation time from a side job because, people have come to depend on whatever it is that you're doing and you're it. There's no backup for you. There's no other employees or maybe there's no other employees to help out. So that's a thing you got to think about, right? There's extra stress involved with it. And the other thing that you should be aware of, but maybe isn't obvious, is that every penny you make, even if it's not on the books, is technically
Every penny
taxable.
you
Right.
make,
So at least here in the U.S., I don't know
every
how this
buck
works.
you
I don't know how
take,
this works in other countries.
every quid you make.
Yeah, right. There you
Sorry.
go. So you got to think about taxes, and I got to be honest. Sometimes side income isn't as clear cut as just getting a W-2 and filling that into your taxes. So either you need to be smart enough to
No.
figure that out, or you need to have an accountant that'll help you with it, and
Or it's got to be a
that's gonna
small
cost you
enough
money.
amount. It's got to be a small enough cash only amount that you don't have an ethical problem not reporting it.
Right, right. You didn't hear that here.
I, hey, you know,
No, you're right. You're right. If it's a small enough amount, and you're talking pennies or whatever that would have been given to the IRS, then that's
you
up to
know,
you. But
yeah.
technically,
uh,
every penny you make is supposed to be reported here in the
Considering
U.S.
how much money the government wastes on so many frivolous
Yeah, I
things, I
know.
would feel very little guilt about minor side cash jobs, them never knowing about it. I know that that's not right, you know,
Right.
but whatever. But no, if
But
it is true, you are legally liable for it.
if you're
Nate is
making
absolutely right.
if you're making so little that that you feel like it's not reportable, unless your judge of not reportable is a much higher than mine, is it really worth doing? Right? I
Well,
made five
you
hundred
know,
bucks this year. I'm not going to report it to the IRS. What did I get out of that?
well, honestly, when I was doing my side consulting stuff, that was sometimes like a game I wanted to buy, or we had a
Yeah,
bill we needed to pay,
yeah,
or you know, I yeah, and so it comes down to the question: is it worth it? There's the old maxim of no one ever said on their deathbed, "Oh man, I wish I had spent more time at work."
right, right.
So unless the side job is something that's really fulfilling, um, if you don't need to do it, I mean, that's my stance. I don't. I don't need extra money right now. I mean,
Right.
I don't. I like money. I like being able to buy things with money, but I honestly have enough to live the lifestyle I want. And I'd rather spend my time after 5 o'clock and on my weekends doing. If I want to sit on the couch and stare at the TV, then I have the freedom to do that. I don't have to worry about chasing down business or you know
Yep.
one thing that always really I would always get nervous about is I would fix someone's computer or something and I'd get really nervous and be like, well, what if they call me back and it's doing the same thing again? Am I going to keep charging them, or did I not do a good
Yep.
enough job, or and now I got to go back and essentially work for free or dilute what I got paid already? I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
I that aspect of it really bothered me.
That,
So,
yeah, and I had the same thing with the web hosting thing, right? So when I worked in web hosting as a day job, right, there was a team of people there, right? If I couldn't figure out a problem, I had someone to fall back on. I could bounce it off the assistant admin, or I could go to the boss because he did have a technical background. Although I probably knew more than him at that point, because he was the boss. You know, that's what happens when you move up the chain. You start to lose some of those technical skills.
yeah,
But when I was doing it as a side job, it was me and my business partner, and we each had our strengths, but they weren't in the same areas, right? So, like he
yeah.
was a Cold Fusion programmer, right? Remember Cold Fusion? Um,
I know of it. I never used it.
so we had one customer because the web host that we left was a big Cold Fusion place. That's where I met this guy, and so he was a Cold Fusion guy. He knew Cold Fusion in and out. He knew how to write Cold Fusion. He knew how to manage Cold Fusion servers. I was okay at that stuff, but the whole other side of the business was just Linux based web hosting. And he was okay at that, but he didn't really know it, right? So if I ran into a
Hmm.
problem, it was on me, right? There was
Right.
no falling back to anybody else. But I'm kind of rambling at that point. My point is, it can get stressful, right? Because now all of a sudden, the day job that you got to punch out at 5, like, there's no end to this. If you have a problem, you need to solve it. There's no like, oh, I'm done at 5. I'll see you tomorrow. Joe can pick it up when I leave. It's get it
Yeah.
done. You know?
Get it done. Get it done. And no, and I just yeah, you're actually at the point where you effectively, if you own your own side business, you're you're for me, you're mentally never off at that point.
No, you're not. You're not, and that's a thing to consider. Now,
Are you being called at 2 in the morning? Unlikely, depending on who you're doing this work for.
that's the
But
other thing to consider. You can pick and choose who you work for, or who you do
yeah,
work
you
for, I
can.
should say, right? If someone seems like they're going to be really high maintenance, you can certainly back off
Hey,
and not work with that person.
I can do that at Red Hat too at this point.
Lucky bugger.
Well, hey, I've been like, yeah, I don't want that account.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I'm sure we'll all get there at some. Well, maybe not all of us, because there has
yeah,
to be
you will.
someone to take the accounts nobody wants.
You will. You're on your way there.
So anyway,
No, no, we've
um,
got a Nate and I work for a great boss who works on making sure that uh that he tries to align accounts with the people who are
mm-hmm.
most compatible.
All right. So this all comes down to, you got to make a judgment call. Is it worth the extra money, right?
All right.
Uh,
So,
Personally, right? So I mentioned the IT side jobs I have. I also run this podcast, right? This is a side job. It makes a little
yeah,
bit of money, not a lot of money, but I'm making like $100 a month from you very generous patrons. Probably half of that goes right back into the show. The other half goes into just if there's expenses and whatnot and equipment upgrades and sometimes I just need an extra couple bucks, but whatever.
oh, you
But
see, to me the podcast is a hobby, so I
yes,
completely
right.
there's like I
So
feel no me I like I feel an obligation towards it, but not to the point where, oh, I get paid for this, so I better make sure I'm there every time
right,
and make sure that if I can't be there, somebody's there, blah,
right.
blah, 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 blah,
So
blah.
my
I happen to enjoy it,
I
but
I have from the beginning I have treated the podcast as just a little bit more than a hobby. It's absolutely a hobby. And if tomorrow I decided I just don't want to do this anymore, it would probably end, and all of you patrons could no longer be patrons, and that's fine, right? Because there's really no commitment. right? Like I do feel a slight bit of commitment to all you viewers and listeners because, I hope you enjoy what we do and I like giving it to you. But, you know,
He
bottom
likes
line
giving
is
it to you.
it's not a job, right? I could walk away from it if I really wanted to. But there is a slight bit of commitment there because there are people paying for it. There's people who count on this show coming out, right? And my goal for this show the whole time, as far as Patreon is concerned, is to make enough money from Patreon to pay for things like the podcast hosting and whatever other subscriptions we have to pay to make the show work, like domain renewals and web hosting. And really, if I were to run out all those numbers, we're probably breaking even right now, which is fine, right? That's great. That was my goal. That's it. We don't need any more patrons. Anyone who else wanted to be a patron, you don't have to. I'm kidding. Anyway, my point is, it is a little bit of work on the side, and the same thing for the YouTube channel that I run, that is Jeep related, right? So there's very little commitment there because the stuff that I've already produced will stay there for as long as I want to keep it there. Nobody's like expecting me to make more. The only difference is if I stop making content for YouTube, it'll slowly stop paying me, and even that is not a lot of money, right? So it's not like life-changing money, right? If you're working at a side job, whether it's your own business or something you're doing for another employer, and that becomes a part of your monthly budget, like money that's required to live on, all of a sudden that commitment is more than just to your employer. It's commitment to your life, right? To your lifestyle.
Now, computer consulting for my dad back in the 80s started as side work.
Yeah.
Because he was an insurance salesman and then later managed a team of salespeople. But he realized he was actually good at it and could make a fair amount of money at it. So the side job became his own thing and became his primary business.
Yep.
So it's possible that, those of you listening who get into side work might end up deciding, hey, I like working for me better than I like working for the man.
Yep. So
And
Jason,
that's if that's you, that's fantastic.
Jason's
I
dad
like
did the same thing. He ran a little web host and ISP on the side, and eventually it became his job, and that was his primary job until he retired. To be honest, he may have retired.
Well, it became his business, right?
Yeah, right. It was his business. That was
That's
his
like
thing,
that whole
right?
American dream thing.
And Jason worked for him for a while. Then he worked on the side for him for a while, right? Because obviously it's family, right? I know a lot of folks who have done the YouTube thing or podcasting, and they turned it into an actual career, right? And that's cool, right? Especially if you're passionate about it, right? If the one thing you love is creating content, like this show, for example, and you can make a living doing it, like, awesome. Great job. Anyway, I don't know if that's where you were going with that, but...
No, no, I was saying, if that's what you want. Now, I've discovered that I don't really want to own my own business. I'm doing well enough working for the man.
Yeah.
And I get to hang my hat up at night. And I like that.
So that was the dream early in my IT career. That was the dream, to get away from this employer that I don't love working for and be my own boss and everything, right? And I never really realized that until after I had really established an IT career. And then I just sort of dipped my toe into it. I'm like, you know what? Working for them over there is a lot easier. I'm just going to go focus on that.
It's easier, right? And if it's not soul destroying, then there's nothing wrong with it.
Right. So we can have a whole other show about trying to find a career that fits you, right? Which is a thing that I think Marc and I have both finally succeeded at, right? I mean, I thought that's exactly where I was when I was at the college too, but then things changed there. But I talked about that already.
Yeah.
No. So
in a good place. So let's say you want to do this side work. I see you got some suggestions other than just running into people around your neighborhood.
Right. So that's of course one way to do it. There's lots of ways to meet clients. There's lots of ways to find side jobs or side work. But in the world that we live in today, where everything is just a couple clicks away on a website, there are websites where you can submit yourself as a resource to do certain jobs, right? Like, these are the skills I have, almost like putting in your resume. And then people can come and say, I need someone who's, I don't know, a Zimbra administrator. And they can find people that are skilled in that. And then they can say, okay, I need some work done on my Zimbra infrastructure or whatever, right? I use that as an example because that was a thing that I was good at the college, and there were actually people on Upwork, which is one of them, that were looking for Zimber administrators, and I very much considered it as a side job then. But then I weighed all these things that we just went through, and decided not to do it because I didn't want the extra stress.
Fiverr's funny because I was in a sea shanty phase a few months ago, although it wouldn't take much to kick that up again. And this one dude used Fiverr to hire, to put together an orchestra for a really cool cover of the Wellerman.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So the two that I know of, and there's probably others out there, and maybe I'll try to do a little more research and throw some more out here. But the two I've actually seen or know people that have used, one of them is called Fiverr. You've probably heard of Fiverr. This was one of the first ones I'd ever heard of, and a lot of people use it to commission artwork. Right? I don't know if you can find IT jobs there, but I think you can. But basically, as a customer, you go to Fiverr and say, I want someone to do a thing for me. It matches you up with people that say they can do that thing, and then you pay them a little bit of money, and then they get that money and do the thing for you, right? Upwork is really the same deal. Upwork is a little less about artwork and a little more about like tasks. Like, I saw a job posting on Upwork, again, this was years ago, where someone had a bunch of data that they needed to translate from one language to another, and they put it up on Upwork, and someone who knows both those languages can get that done, right? Or if you have a tool, it'll do it for you, right? You're being paid for your expertise. You don't necessarily have to know Arabic, right? Maybe you have Google Translate at your disposal. Or the thing about the Zimber infrastructure, that was literally a thing. Someone's like, oh, I've got a Zimber server, and it's not doing this right, it's not doing that, and I need help, right? So that's a great place to go look for just task-oriented things to do. I'm good at administering I'm good at translating data, for example. You go and do that.
Well, there's this guy here on Fiverr. I just did a search for Linux, and there's this dude who will fix your Linux server issues.
There you go.
Starting at 20. He's got 478 reviews, and his 5 stars, man.
Yeah, right. So
actually, 1277 total reviews.
And it doesn't require leaving your employer to go find a new job. You're not like putting out resumes and trying to find a match. It's like a dating site for work.
Yeah,
the best way I can describe that, I think. But yeah, I've heard good things about both Fiverr and Upwork. And if any of you know of other sites out there that you think I should include in the list when I put up the show notes, let me know within the next couple hours, because after that it'll be too late. Put them in chat maybe if you're here live.
Wow, this could be fascinating.
What are you looking at?
I'm just looking at Fiverr. Anyway, I'm going to stop looking at Fiverr.
I know a lot of folks that have used Fiverr for, like, well, making a podcast, right? You need logo artwork. You need, say, a theme for your live stream. Like this theme I applied to this one. This happens to come from StreamYard or Streamlabs. But you can pay someone to make a theme for Streamlabs. And they'll just give you the stuff. And you pay them, and there you go. You've got a custom theme, or hopefully custom theme. I know another YouTuber who paid through Fiverr to get the logo and stuff for his YouTube channel done, right? It's a great way to get stuff done for folks that don't maybe have artistic talents.
I occasionally get the people who point me to articles about people who like run D&D games professionally.
Oh yeah.
For a hefty amount of coin, like, you should do this. I'm like, no, I don't think so.
I think that takes some of the fun out of it, right?
Now that I looked on Fiverr, let's see.
Now you're like, what does a dungeon master make?
I'm gonna go D and D. See if I can search that. Category. I'll do cartoon. Oh, this is drawing. Got it. Let's go for Dungeon Master. I will be your incredible Dungeon Master. Wow, there are people who are on Fiverr offering to be Dungeon Masters.
Do they list what it's worth? Like, do they list what their demanding price is?
So this guy will be your Dungeon Master for D&D 5e games, starting at $50.
Oh. $50 for a game I presume he enjoys playing to begin with.
So he'll be, yeah, this is actually fascinating. I'm going to throw this in chat.
So anyway, and we'll, if you want to throw that into the notes, if people want to see it, they can go ahead and do that. But yeah, so and this actually brings up a really valid point, and then I think, unless you had more on the topic, I think we'll close up. But if you want to be a dungeon master for pay through Fiverr, just keep in mind that now
I guess I could do that.
You're all of a sudden you're being paid for a thing that you enjoy doing, but you're doing it on someone else's schedule. You're doing it, sort of beholden to another master, right?
No, you could set up. That's like McDonald's has a schedule. If I want a Big Mac at 3 a.m., too bad.
Right.
I got to go when they're open.
Right. No,
so
what I mean is, it could, and maybe it won't, but it could easily turn from this is a fun hobby to this is a job, and all the baggage that comes along with a job.
Well, honestly, occasionally, even with the gaming group that you and I are both in, there were times when it felt like it was turning into a job.
Right.
So,
but then all you had to do,
I'm the one paying because we're often hosting at my house and I'm making the food.
All you have to do though is say, I need a break. You get a break.
Yeah, then
right?
You feel guilty.
Maybe through Fiverr it's different, and you can just simply not offer your services anymore. But then is that person going to keep reaching out to you? Oh, our campaign's not done.
I think. Well, so that becomes a matter of setting clear expectations, and then if you do a crappy job and you don't meet the expectations, you get bad reviews. I mean, that's the market would fix that. Wow. This was not bad for a topic you made up today, huh?
Yeah, right. I think this went pretty well. So, I thought we would talk about what you could actually do as a side job, but that's so subjective. It's based on your skill set. Whatever you think you're good at. And the comment earlier about how I don't trust my skills enough to do that. I mean, imposter syndrome is a thing. Get out of your own way. Honestly, if someone's paying you to do a job, it means that they have enough faith that you're able to do that job. I fought with the same thing for years, right? So,
and if things really go to hell and you can't deliver, don't take the money.
Yeah, I guess it's that simple.
You could be like, you know what, this isn't working.
Yeah, I can't do it. I'm sorry, but here's your money back, right?
Yeah,
best you can do. All right, so I think we covered it well enough, folks.
If you get lost between the moon and New York City, man, the best you can do is fall in love. Arthur. Yeah. Anyway, okay. I was going to sing it, but I'm not going to do that.
Not enough to drink yet?
Yeah.
You're drinking beer tonight instead of the whiskey.
Drinking a summer shandy on this hottest day of the year. I felt this was an appropriate adult beverage, a summer shandy. Hot out.
I work in government. I just need to not fall asleep during work hours. Often.
It was like that at Merck sometimes. Big Pharma and the government have a similar cadence, I think.
Yeah. So, anyway, if anyone thinks we missed something, please feel free to reach out and let us know. We can always recover part of the topic
let us know.
If there's enough to talk about. And with that, I think we're going to take a little break. So we will see you guys in probably 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know if
what
we
do you
need
think?
a long
Another
break
shandy,
today.
Or should I pivot to the Seagram's Italian Ice wine coolers?
Absolutely going to get myself another beer as soon as the break comes.
Yeah, I think another shandy will work.
All right, folks. We'll be back in a few. See you then.
Peace.
Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. All right, we are back.
I just want to point out that before everybody thinks I'm a friggin' alcoholic, this show and Tuesday night game nights are about the only places I ever consistently drink at all. And then, like, like we had you guys over for the 4th of July. There was obviously beer at that, but like I'm not like slamming beer like every night.
Are
I don't know
you
why I feel I even need to say anything, but
are you
it
worried
just
about
struck
that?
me as well. I mean, I've always got a beer in my hand on this show, but
Look,
again, that's because of this show
if somebody judged my life
or whiskey.
based on how much alcohol I drink on Iron Sysadmin, they would think that I was a raging alcoholic.
I think it's part. I think it's part of the Iron Sysadmin shtick,
It really kind of is, right? Since
right? And especially now that we can't get legitimately drunk at Red Hat events.
right, because drinking at work is much better.
Oh God, yes. I think I was sober for only half of the last summit. Oh my God. Yeah.
Do you need to drink every night to be an alcoholic? That's a
Uh
valid question. Probably not.
okay. All
I
joking
guess
aside,
alcoholism is
yeah.
basically a dependence on alcohol, and I can firmly say I believe I am not dependent on alcohol in any form, because if there's none in the house, that's it. There's none in the house. There's no like
Okay.
scraping together pennies to go get some because I feel like I need it.
All right. So what's considered an alcoholic? Now this is asking the internet, and this is an answer from WebMD. But this
Okay.
sounds like a reasonable answer. What is considered an alcoholic? For women, it's having more than 3 drinks a day or 7 a week. For men, it's 4 or more per day or 14 a week.
Why is it higher for men?
So I
That seems
I don't know
unfair.
why it's higher for men.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, you know, is drinking 3 beers a day an alcoholic?
But it
It
said
could be.
7 in a week for
7 in
women.
a week for women,
14, you said, for men?
14 a week for men. Yeah, it seems I mean,
So men can drink
yeah.
twice as much. Maybe it's a
And
social thing because men are socially more expected to drink, which is weird in itself, right?
well, men tend to be larger too.
Yeah. Now we're getting into all
Obviously
of these,
there's
like,
obviously there's
yeah,
big women and small men,
yeah,
but for whatever reason the definition,
yeah.
depends on your biology, it seems a little bit. The point is, am I drinking 4 or more a day or 14 a week? No, not even close. So if you drink every night, um, okay, so let me answer Arinomi's question properly. No, you don't need to drink every night to be an alcoholic.
Right.
You could absolutely be an alcoholic without drinking every night because you might take a couple of days off. But if you have 14 or more drinks in a week period, you might have a problem.
I always
But I
considered
think
it like
I
a matter of dependence, right? Like
right.
if you feel
I
like
think it's
you cannot
arbitrary.
survive without, I thought that was alcoholism, but
I'm
I don't know.
probably more dependent on coffee than I am on alcohol.
Agree.
I want my coffee, and coffee is important so that the others around me survive.
Right. Right.
It's not that I'm going to die, it's that I'm going to kill the other people around here if I don't have coffee.
So
So it's a safety measure for them.
I guess to wrap this up, I'll give the same disclaimer I give to anyone who ever wants to be a guest on this show. Because if you've ever watched the show, you may think there's an expectation that you bring a drink with you. I
Oh
always
Lord,
say
no.
that drinking is welcome, but not required.
Yeah,
So,
no. It's not. I've got very good friends who don't drink for whatever reason. Either they are alcoholics
right.
themselves, or they 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 feel it's against their faith, or
Mm-hmm.
it's just not good for
Mm-hmm.
it's not a wise health decision. I
It
mean, I'm a
probably
type 2
isn't a wise health
diabetic. I
decision.
probably shouldn't drink as much as I do already. But yeah, pressuring people into drinking, that's not cool. That's never acceptable.
I mean, Charles doesn't drink anymore.
But does he drink any less? Huh? Huh? Huh?
He decided it was no longer a thing he wanted in his life. He still co-hosts the show from time to time. Zero pressure.
Yeah.
We don't expect him to drink because we know it's not part of his life. So
Yeah. And that's absolutely cool and
yep.
acceptable.
So anyway,
So Here's to you, Charles.
Yeah, yeah. The Iron Sysadmin podcast does
We
not
salute you.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Mandate.
Prohibit drinking, but we also don't mandate it. Do what you want. And drink responsibly. I feel like a beer ad now.
Gambling problem? Dial 1-800-LOSER.
I can't believe that ads for like online casinos and whatever include that number at the end. I get that they're mandated by law, I'm sure.
Arinomi, Arinomi, you're bringing up wonderful stuff in chat. He's saying he asked because he finds it difficult to actually define the minimum limit of alcoholism. I think in this day when everybody thinks they're a constitutional lawyer and a virologist and everything else and pushes that opinion on social media,
yep.
I know what I know enough to say, you know what? I don't know enough. My daughter, with the masters in social work would be the person I'd go to first.
There you go.
And ask her, what did you learn about alcoholism? From
maybe
a social worker perspective.
Maybe she'd ask Google.
What would you she might ask who, I don't know. But she has certainly received more professional training on alcoholism than I ever have.
Mm-hmm.
I do know this, with scouting, alcohol is absolutely prohibited at scout events.
Yep.
So there's parts of my life where it is not welcome.
And that's fine. Anyway, on to the part of the show where we don't talk about social problems and we talk about announcements.
Yay, announcements. Well, we do occasionally talk about social problems. They tend to be more about how stupid Facebook is.
We do from time to time. All right. So, let's see here. Patreon update. I don't think this list has changed since last time we recorded, which is fine. Our patrons, as of this morning at like 10 o'clock, Jérémy, Arinomi, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, Matt, David, Solemn with a 3 and a 0. It might be a pipe in there. Is it an L? I can't tell. Trooper-ish, Linux 666, gimpyb, Marc with a K, DeMentor, our good pal, John the Nice Guy, Marc with a C, Julius, Andi, J, Charles, and 22532. Our good buddy and oldest patron.
Cheers to you too.
So, fun fact, this list is actually sorted just because it's the way Patreon gives it to me, newest patron to oldest. So
I like that.
Go. I could reverse order it sometime just to give.
No, I like ending on 2.
Yeah, it's good.
And cheering for him.
2. We should make a sound effect for 2. It's getting to be a part of the show now. As always,
this world.
If you would like some Iron Sysadmin merchandise, you can find it at Teespring. Teespring.com/stores/Iron Sysadmin.
There, Arinomi, you're tracking.
It's basically t-shirts. T-shirts. Yeah, he said.
Yeah, one of these days I'll get one, man. One of these days I'll get one.
I owe one to our buddy Odin.
Odin, the Norse god?
Yeah, he's a listener. Didn't you know that?
Does Alligator Loki listen?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's a shame.
He's not a patron.
Alligator Loki's the best Loki.
All right, so let's see. Did I get any other announcements? I don't think so. That's about everything. We don't have any new reviews this week or these 2-3 weeks. I think that's it. I feel like I should be plugging B-Sides Delaware, but Jason didn't come, so we don't.
I don't know anything about B-Sides off the top of my head. At least not enough to plug it.
It's coming sometime. Not today, but in the future.
This month?
I don't think it's this month either. It's this year.
Oh, well, there's not much of it. Crazy enough, there's not much of this year left.
You're right.
Can you believe that crap, Spock?
I know, it's weird. Somebody, maybe you've seen this. Somebody has been sharing this meme of Skeletor. Remember Skeletor from He-Man?
Of course I remember Skeletor.
You know how he'd always be, at the end, he'd be like, I'll get you next time, and run off? Well, it's that meme, right? And the thing that he says is 2050 is now closer to today than 1990 was. And then he runs off and says, I'll get you next time or whatever.
Because he's a jerk.
Yeah.
Stupid Skeletor.
Freaking Skeletor. So yeah, I don't think we have any other announcements. Except that things are happening. Apparently DEF CON went on last week,
Yeah,
last weekend maybe.
yeah. Nate, J-Scar went, and
We were
were
thinking
maybe gonna
about
try
having
and talk to him
J-Scar
about
on,
it tonight.
but he said he needed some time to prepare. So next time we do a show, we'll probably have J-Scar on. He'll tell us all about what happened at DEF CON. I didn't partake at all this year, even though they had it. They did it hybrid, so they had an online presence and they had it in person. So
I think I was on the water during DEF CON.
Maybe. No, I think you.
August 1st through the 4th was my canoe trip. When was DEF CON?
I don't know what the dates were.
Okay.
It was like late last week into the weekend, I think. I could be wrong.
Oh, so it probably started when I got back.
Somebody's listening like, God damn it, DEF CON were these days? How can you not know that? Sorry?
Yeah, I don't... DEF CON's never been my bag, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
And
I mean...
and to be super, super honest, because that's just who I am, the virtual stuff for the past, it's going to be 2 years in March.
Yeah.
Screw you, anti-vaxxers. I'm over virtual stuff, man.
You
I don't
have
even
been for a
care.
while, though. It's not the first time I've heard you say that.
I have been, but I honestly, it's been going on for so long now that I'm just like super over it.
I do miss the time when online meetings were a novelty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they were the thing that you defaulted to when you couldn't meet in person, but most of the time you were in person.
Yep.
And granted, as remote workers, like, we spend all of our days in virtual meetings anyway, but
yeah,
it's so much worse now because we don't have an option to see people in person, which we did get to do relatively frequently. You know, monthly, maybe even 2 or 3 times a month before.
Yeah. But we've bitched about this in the past, and I don't want to spend 10 minutes going off about it. So
yeah, because we'll end up going down roads.
Talk to me about rediscovering a love.
Yeah, right.
A sweet, sweet love.
So I've talked on
like
this
that
show
between a man and his puppy.
Yeah, I've talked in the past on this show about the project I used to take with me to DerbyCon, which was a Raspberry Pi based capture the flag contest in a hat, right?
He has talked about this,
yes,
folks. He's talked about it a lot.
I have talked about it. So
possibly almost as much as that hex lamp.
Right. So the thing that I don't really talk about much, which is kind of implied, but when I was younger, I was really into electronics. And that's what led into computers. And when I found computers, I kind of put down the soldering iron and really didn't care much about that anymore. And I focused on computers because it was just more interesting to me. And then when I started doing the Derby project, I kind of got reintroduced to the world of sitting down with a soldering iron and doing things like connecting a display, you know, an OLED display cool. to the Raspberry Pi so that I could fit it inside of a hat without this big, bulky sets of connectors and crap, right? Because when you're doing something...
Where was the Raspberry Pi? Did you put it in a shoebox?
It was in a hat.
Oh, okay. Just, I wasn't sure.
You forgot. It's in a Derby, literally. It's in a Derby about the size of our fedoras.
I know where it is.
Anyway.
I'm just causing trouble.
But because of the confined space, you couldn't just be like, oh, well, I need a connector for this and connector for that. You had to, like, take wire and solder it together and make it do stuff, right?
Right,
and
of course.
I was really rusty at that, and thankfully the guy who helped me with that project the first year I did it, his name's Rich, he worked with me at the college. He was still really into it, so of course...
That's a very strange last name. He worked with me at the college.
Yeah, that was his last name. It's funny, right? It is weird.
Yeah.
His kids get teased all the time about it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's Tony. He worked with me at the college.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is that, like, that got me back into it, and then, of course, when DerbyCon went away, I didn't have a reason to do that anymore, but I obviously kept all the tools and stuff that I had accumulated. Well, now I'm getting back into it with... So, I've talked about the hex lamp, as Mark was kind enough to point out. Well, I was excited to make it, and now it's made, and it works, and I'm happy about that.
One might say incessantly, but yes, it is very cool.
Mark, let me tell you about my hex lamp. Isn't it great?
Do you have a few minutes for me to talk to you about my Lord and Savior, my hex lamp?
Anyway, the spirit of the hex lamp was that from start to finish, right? I got a 3D print from the internet, and I made all the pieces, right? And then I got this little controller board and an LED strip, and I put them together, and I flashed open source software to it, and it was a lot of fun. Well, since then, I've built 2 more LED projects. I'm putting up 3 fingers. 2 more LED projects for my kids' room because they had a little LED strip this little cheap thing that they had broken.
It's like from Shrek when the guy doesn't know how to count. Pick 3, my lord. Pick 3.
Right.
And he has 2 fingers up.
Right. But I did that, and the kids love it. I made one for each of them. And the cool thing about that was, so when you make, so there's a software called WLED, which is what's on the hex clamp, and it's what I put on this.
Which sounds like a radio station.
WLED.
WLED.
It does. But WLED is made to work on these little ESP 8266 and ESP 32 boards, which are like, if you're familiar with Arduino, it's a similar concept, where it's a programmable chip that has a bunch of GPIO pins on it. I thought I had one on my desk here, but I don't. I must. Oh, that's the one I put in the other LED strip. Never mind. But they're just like a little controller board that you can flash software, or you can write software to, and then you can send commands over GPIO to whatever you've got plugged into it. So I've made. So when you put these things together, what you end up with is, you need power, which powers the board, and then you need connections soldered to the board to go to the LED strip. Well, what you end up with is this mess of what looks like unfinished work, because you have a control board with things soldered to it. So what I needed was a case to put it in. Now, anybody who remembers Radio Shack remembers you used to be able to go to Radio Shack and buy project boxes.
Yep.
You remember those, right? And then you would just drill the holes.
I'm old.
Sorry. You would drill the holes into them that you needed, then you'd run your wires through, and then you'd do your thing. Well, 3D printers have replaced this. Mark, I don't know if you are involved in any projects like this, but you can find, if you've thought up a project that someone else has done before, right, you can find a print for it on Thingiverse.
Oh, I have done that for many things. When my daughter got her Apple Watch, she wanted me to print her out this little Macintosh charging station for it.
Right.
And it's pretty cool.
Right. So what I have, in fact, I do have the first one I printed here. Hold on. This little box here that I've printed, and this isn't the one I ended up using, obviously. It has, this fits right on top here and snaps in place, and it's got little pegs in here that the ESP board sits in. And then
Married with children.
Right, and then it's got a hole here to run your power in through, and it's got a hole on the other side to run the LEDs back out through the other side, and you basically have a little control box right there.
I printed out little boxes for Bry when he was for his sensors for his sump pump.
Right. Same deal, right? So I found a different box that I liked better than this one, but I kept it because it is still a valid box for use for some other project. But it even has vent holes in it for to let air in to cool the little processor on the ESP 8266 or out, right? But what I ended up with, and maybe I'll put a picture in the show notes, what I ended up with is a very professional looking LED strip. It looks equally as good, maybe even better than the cheap LED strip that the kids had that they broke, right?
It's handcrafted.
Plus, it's 100% open source. Like, isn't that cool? I don't know. I think it's
that is cool. I bust your chops a little bit, but I totally get where you're coming from on this project stuff.
Right. And then I'm fiddling around with Home Assistant, right? That's one of the reasons I like these things. WLED integrates with Home Assistant really well. So now the kids can ask the Google spying device to turn on their lights and change the color and set it to different modes and whatever. Same as with the hex lamp that Mark doesn't like me talking about.
No, I don't mind you talking about it. Just I feel like I know that hex lamp better than some coworkers.
So I have, as many people do, I have a digital thermometer on my front porch, so I can tell how hot it is outside. It's old. It doesn't do much other than display the temperature in the inside of the house, right? I can't talk to it from Home Assistant, which has some benefits, right? If you can tell how hot it is outside,
you just have to yell at it,
do stuff, right?
Through the window.
Well, the other thing you can do is Home Assistant can read weather forecasts, and you can base stuff off of that, which is fine. But I really wanted something that got me the actual temperature outside. So, again, with one of these little ESP boards, you might remember me talking about that open source thermostat project that I was tinkering with.
Yeah.
When I was buying parts for that, I got these little temperature sensor boards. They're called BME 280s. And they use 4 wires, one for power, or 2 for power, I should say, and then 2 of them for data that goes back to whatever you've got them connected to. And they'll give you temperature and humidity and barometric pressure and stuff. the ESP boards with this other thing called Tasmota, which is another piece of open source software you can put on these boards, which is what these light bulbs that you can see in the background run, um, will read the temperature sensors, and then it'll talk to Home Assistant and read the temperature in. So I built a little thermometer for the front porch in the exact same box I built for the WLED.
So what you could do is you could have the light change color based on the temperature.
I could. 100%.
Like if it's really
I could.
cold, it could be blue.
Yes.
And as it gets hotter, it could go to brighter and brighter red and orange.
I could do that. That
You
is
could do
absolutely
that.
a thing that I can do with
You
Home
should
Assistant,
do that.
which is kind of cool.
So you
right?
can look at the lamp. You can look at the light and
Well,
know how hot or cold it is based on the color the bulb is.
For me, what I use it for is I have currently Nest thermostats for both my air conditioner and one of the heaters in my house, but there's several other heaters that aren't smart thermostats yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can do is between the actual outside temperature and the forecasted temperature, I can tell the house whether it should turn on the air conditioning or the heat. So I don't even have to go and turn those things on, and it'll reset them at the overnight, right? So the old dad argument, don't touch my thermostat. Well, if you touch my thermostat, it's going to get set back later by the computer in the basement that resets it.
Well, there you go. I still like the light idea based on what the temperature is.
Oh, yeah,
outside.
absolutely. So I think I told you about this. I also have my Octoprint instance tied into Home Assistant. So when I start printing something, Octoprint has a camera, right? So if there's no light, the camera can't see what it's printing, right? So I have one of these smart bulbs down there, and when the printer starts printing, it turns on the light so that it can see so the camera can see the print, and then when it's done, it turns it back off again.
Clever girl.
Pretty cool, right? So yeah, those are the neat little projects that I've had going on. I'm actually kind of excited about them because I feel like it's bringing me into something that I used to enjoy and I got away from, and now I'm kind of going back to re-enjoying it.
That is good.
It is kind of
cool. Fantastic.
I like it. And the only other thing I had to talk about is the VR headset that you gave me. I finally have actually working because you graciously gave me the headset, but then I needed the controllers and stuff.
I needed the controllers for my Vive.
Oh, I'm not blaming you.
I mean, for my Index.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not being ungrateful.
Did you jump into Job Simulator or Vacation Simulator yet?
Not yet. Not yet. You and I talked about that. It might have been Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see how much. Vacation if you only pick one Vacation Simulator, is probably more of a game.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
The kids want to try Job Simulator. They must have seen it somewhere.
Job Simulator's hilarious.
So I may pick that up.
There might be a bundle.
Maybe.
I don't know. Let's see.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like 8-year-old me is just like so excited that I now have a VR system. Because that was like the thing, right? I mean, maybe not when you were a kid, but when I was a kid, 80s, 90s, that was the thing. This is the future, VR. And we had like movies like Lawnmower Man, which were done with like 8 polygons, right?
Yeah. Job Simulator's like $20.
Oh yeah.
Vacation Simulator's $30. Yeah.
I looked it up.
Job Simulator's pretty funny. They're both very funny. Both good.
We'll probably pick up Job Simulator and then Vacation Simulator later. Later.
They're both. I mean, they both have objectives and stuff, but they're both also very sandboxy.
Mm-hmm.
Like even after you've done what you're supposed to do, you can just goof off with all the objects and stuff, and they interact in very funny ways.
So it's like having a real job.
In some ways.
When you're done what you're supposed to do, you can goof off.
Or you goof off during.
So anyway, yeah, we'll probably try that. No, we the kids actually love the.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you. Have you tried Google Earth VR yet? Because that's free.
I did. That was fun.
That is sometimes, let's call it, stunning.
The funny thing is, I couldn't figure out how to get to Street View, which I think would have been really cool.
Street View is hella cool.
There must be a button that I missed during the introduction that lets you switch from Globe View to Street View, and I couldn't figure out what the hell it was because now I have to go look it up or something.
I think there is, and yeah, Google it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty neat to just to be able to pan around the globe like that was pretty cool. But to get into Street View, I think would really sort of
Yeah.
finish that experience. But yeah, we're the kids actually love just the little home they put you in when you open up Steam VR. You know, like your
Hmm.
home screen where
I'm
you can
familiar.
pick games and where you can tinker around. They love playing in there. And Valve's The Lab
The lab is good. Yep.
is really fun. Like whenever I want to tinker around with VR, I just fire that up because it's fun. And there was a planetarium app that I found for free, which they've been
There's
tinkering
yeah.
with.
There's a fair number of free things. Now some of the stuff are just basically sometimes just like tech demos and aren't
Mm-hmm.
that great. Beat Saber is a good one. There's you played you played Space Pirate Trainer here, I think. That was the shooter
I haven't played that,
with the gun in each hand, Space Pirate Trainer. That's an excellent one.
but
Uh
the lab has a cool like archery game, which I found
yeah,
lots of
it
fun.
does.
And that space game, there's like it's very akin to like Asteroid, except 3D and VR.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That was lots of fun because you know your one hand is the ship, right? So it's very maneuverable. It really takes like I've always thought that video games. The one thing that I find the most infuriating about a video game is when the controls get in your way.
Yeah.
Like your thumb can't move fast enough, or your, you know, the reaction from your brain to your fingers is not fast enough, and it's very frustrating to me because it's like I should be able to do this. Like even in a case where if this were real life, I could do this, right? But I can't because of this stupid controller in my thumbs. Well, VR takes that away to some extent, right? So like
The
being able
some.
to move that ship around really quickly and precisely, I can do that because my hand moves quickly and precisely. But if it were a controller, it'd be all kinds of like oversteer and understeer, and you know what I mean. Driving's a perfect
Oh,
one. I'm terrible at driving games, but I can drive pretty well, right?
yeah. But there's a lot of if you filter for free VR games,
Yeah,
there's some of them are really good. There's the Star Wars Droid Repair Bay. You might enjoy that.
I'll have to look that one up.
And yeah, Star Wars Squadrons. That's a full game,
Mm-hmm.
but you get to fly an X-wing or a Tie Fighter in virtual reality. It
That would be cool.
it's unreal. Yeah.
I'll have to try that out.
I'm glad it's working out for you though.
Yeah,
Glad the girls are enjoying it too. If they do your girls like Minecraft?
they do. And I grabbed Minecraft VR because I
Did you
remember
grab
you telling me about it. I
did you
haven't.
grab Vivecraft? Because Vivecraft is the one that lets you use mods.
That I think that's what I got.
Because Vivecraft will let you do MC Parks, which is Disney World built block by block.
The thing I'm worried about is that if I show the kids Minecraft VR, I will never get my laptop back.
That's not my problem.
I know it's not your problem, but that's the reason I haven't showed it to them yet.
Yeah. Well,
I
that's where
haven't
you
even
just got
tried
to
it
set.
myself yet, to be honest. So for all I know,
That's
it's
where you just gotta. You're gonna have to just set limits at that point, I guess.
oh yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely. But it'll be a constant thing. Like it'll be the middle of the workday. You know, I'll be on my one-on-one call with Uncle Mark, and Kira will come running in saying, "Can I play Minecraft VR?"
and then if you don't say yes, you're a terrible dad.
Right.
We all
See,
know that.
see. So anyway,
Yeah.
what do you have going on, Mark? I feel like I went on forever about these little ESP boards.
That's fine. That's fine. So my youngest daughter Abby is in Korea. I think I talked about that last time that she was leaving, or
Mm-hmm.
she had. God, had she left that Thursday? I forget whether you had a show that day.
I I
No,
don't
I think
think
she
so
was
because I
on.
feel
I
like you
think she was
wouldn't
on the
have come.
run up to leaving.
Yeah.
So she's done with her 2 weeks quarantine in the next day or so. So she's excited about that. She'll finally be able to go out and about and stuff and start her job. She's teaching English to tiny little Korean children. There's two of the teachers that work at the school with her in her building. One is actually across the hall. She's British, and she actually that one teacher like made her day by giving her a beer the other day as like a little gift. I don't think she could hang out with her because quarantine, but it was still kind of cool.
Right.
But so we've been using the group watching feature on Disney Plus to watch The Bad Batch together.
That's cool.
And then last night we watched What If, which is the new Marvel animated series, which is actually really pretty stinking great.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been watching the Clone Wars because I've been told that the Bad Batch is basically a continuation of the Clone Wars.
it is a continuation, and you should watch the Clone Wars because the Clone Wars is some of the best Star Wars out there anyway.
I've
So
heard, and I've been enjoying it. I'm still like halfway through the first season, maybe close to the end of the first season.
and it's a good season, but the show actually gets
I
better
heard it
as
gets
it
a lot
goes
better
on.
as it goes,
And and
as
it's
many series do.
and it's basically the story of Ahsoka. Like she's probably one of the best characters in Star Wars,
What I
and Clone
liked,
Wars tells her story.
what I liked is that it fills in the gaps on General Grievous, or it has started to fill in the gaps on General Grievous.
Oh, there's a lot of gaps that get filled in.
Because what it happens,
Um,
what between episodes 2 and 3, or 1 and 2,
it happens in between episodes two and
two
three.
and three. Because General
You're
Grievous just like
also
shows up in episode 3, and you're like, who the hell is this weird droid with lightsabers?
Yeah, there's some gaps filled in there.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't want to spoil too much, but there are several characters
yeah,
who you've met before who just really shine in the Clone Wars. And then later on Star Wars Rebels. Rebels takes place well later, right?
yeah.
Right before the rebellion and is fantastic. Anyway, but so she's in South Korea. I should mention that, right? She's in the good one,
Mm-hmm.
South Korea.
Not the bad Korea.
And Disney doesn't have Disney Plus in Korea yet. And when you log in from a Korean IP, it doesn't want you to log in. So I actually ended up using my Asus router. I've done this before to get to my home lab from like a Red Hat office,
Mm-hmm.
but I set up a VPN for her through my router so that when she wants to use Disney, she just fires up OpenVPN on her Windows machine, connects to the Unclemarc VPN. I sent her the cert via I sent her the cert and the directions, and she was able to get it working without me having to do a screen share with her. So
Pretty
that was
cool.
kind of cool.
That means she's
Yeah,
smart. If she could get OpenVPN
she's
working that
pretty friggin'
easily.
she's smarter than me, I think. She's not as nerdy with computers, but she's pretty bright.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a technical tie-in, right? For her to watch Disney, I had to set up the VPN. But yeah, the group watch feature in Disney's pretty cool. Where
I
you
haven't tried
basically
it.
start a watch group and then it calls it a stream. So I've got her on FaceTime, you know, her on FaceTime in the little cup holder in the chair next to me while we're watching stuff and making our normal snarky comments because that's what we do.
Well, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool.
So she's doing well. And I was very apprehensive about her going because she and I are buddies. We've always done a lot of stuff together, including the canoe trips and stuff with Crew 74. But it's super easy in 2021 to stay in touch with someone even who's around the world. And I think the pandemic has kind of taught us
Yeah.
how to maintain relationships more virtually.
And not just that,
So
it's
that
given us tools. A lot of the tools, like that watch party thing, may not have
yeah,
existed. I was just having a
right. It's
conversation with my wife about this earlier, how I feel like even when the pandemic is over, and I know that sounds optimistic of me, but even when it's over, we will have made technological gains that we might not have otherwise.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
But I just want
all
to say,
that,
like, before you move on from talking about her, good for her. Just to, like, go out completely, I am assuming that's out of her comfort zone, right? I would have been
yeah,
terrified as a teenager or a young adult going to freaking any, like, going to the next state versus a whole foreign
yeah,
country.
it's definitely a heck of a move. So, we'll see how she does. We
Yeah.
had an exchange student. We've had a couple of exchange students, but our first one was from South Korea. Again, the good one.
Hmm.
We had Helen was with us for 2 school years when Abby was in high school, and she became sort of fascinated with the Korean culture, and she's not seeing anybody. Her advisor, like, she got a perfect GPA in chemistry at Seton Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Her lab advisor's like, yeah, you taking a year off won't hurt your grad school chances. So if this is something you want to do it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thanks. No. And it's working out all right. It was much harder the days leading up to her leaving. I don't find myself sobbing uncontrollably now that she's there because, like I said, we can connect pretty easily whenever we want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's working out well. Um,
Got to imagine
I
that's kind
picked
of a moment as a parent.
it's so right. It's weird, like, right? You don't want your kid just sitting on your couch being a loser.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to be successful, but sometimes when they're successful, they go away. Like they
Right.
move across the country or they go do and it's like, my child has left the nest and that's good, but that also kind of sucks.
Yep.
In some ways, I wish my child were a slacker living in my basement because I like hanging out with them. So it's a very it's complicated, man. You'll
Yeah.
get there. You will get there
Oh, I'm
as a
sure.
parent.
I'm sure. At the moment, I'm just worried about the teenage years. Um,
Oh yeah, you're screwed. Um, Teenage girls, please. Oof.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Um, Other than that, Bloodborne picked that up on my PS4. The game's a couple of years old. It's written by the same guy who did Dark Souls. Action role playing, very difficult. It's got a very gothic vampire and werewolf feel at the beginning, but it moves into this whole Lovecraftian type of lore. And the combat is very difficult, and like the bosses are like figuring out how to beat a boss. It's sort of like an MMO in a way, but you're solo. Although you can do co-op by ringing a bell and another hunter comes to help you. But it's intentionally hard.
Yeah.
Um, you die a lot, and when you die, you respawn at a lamp, and the currency you've collected, blood echoes, drop either on the ground or a monster absorbs them, and you got to go back and get them back, or you lose them. And if you die again before you get those blood echoes back, you've lost them. And these blood echoes are the currency you use to both level your character and upgrade your gear as well as to buy stuff. So
Hmm.
so these blood echoes are pretty important. And the whole level respawns except for bosses. Once you've killed a boss, it's dead. So there's a lot of farming and there's all different weapons and all other stuff. And what's neat about it is the game kind of drops you into it and doesn't really tell you what the fuck is going on. Like a lot of it is very, very, you got to figure out. Now, obviously in 2021, there's a wiki and
Yeah.
total spoilers if you want them, but I've been trying to be light on that. And the game, it's one of those games that like you kill a boss and now I've killed the second boss and now I'm like working my way through this new area and I'm like it's very tense like the first time you ever go to a new spot in an area. And then you learn what monsters are there and
That's cool.
uh
Sounds
yeah,
like a
yeah,
fun game.
it is a fun game, very hard but pretty dang fun. uh and then another nerdy thing, Josh and I played in a Magic tournament last Friday at Jaff. It's a comic book store. Um, he's going to run a Magic tournament with the crew this Monday, and I might even be able to. It's during the day, but I might be able to sneak in and play. They Magic has released a D&D
Speaking of
themed
office
set.
hours and free time.
Yeah. So I've sunk probably a little too much money into that already.
Yeah.
Magic is one of those games that I burst into it, I play a bit, and then I kind of put it aside.
It's one of
So
those
I'm kind
games
of
that you can spend a ton of money on.
I probably have dropped close to 200 at Jaff in last week
Yeah.
between that and some comics, yeah. Which actually that's 200's not a huge amount in the grand scheme of Magic for
No, no, it isn't.
which is embarrassing to say that out loud.
No, I just dropped a ton of money on a freaking fridge because adulting sucks.
Adulting can be challenging, but but yeah. So back into Magic a little bit, which
Yeah.
is fun.
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
play
I
I
played it
played
back in
Magic
high
when it first
school.
came out.
I played Magic back in high school in the late '90s. I have no idea when it
Yeah.
came out. Is that close to when it came out? I don't know.
1993.
Okay, so yeah, mid to late '90s. I played it, like '96,
This
'97.
game has legs, man. It
Yeah,
has legs.
it's been around a long time. In
There's
fact,
you,
I had recently stumbled across a pile of my old Magic cards, and I was still at the college at the time, and I had a coworker there that still
you
played,
know,
and I showed him the cards. I'm like, "Is there anything worth saving in here?" And he looked through them all pretty quickly, and he's like, "No, they're all trash." I'm like, oh, come
but
on.
were they?
I don't know.
Or was he snowing you?
Well, he didn't ask for any of them later, so I
Okay.
assume he was not
Yeah,
trying to play me, or he
you
didn't
didn't
know.
get
I
rid
don't
of him,
know.
did you?
I don't
Do you
remember
still have
now.
him?
Either they're still in the attic or I got rid of them. I don't know.
You should. So you should do two things. You should check and see if they're in the attic, and if they are, you should bring them here so we can check them out. And maybe one of these weeks you should come and do Friday Night Magic
Dude,
at down here at Jav.
I have not played in so long.
Yeah, but what you do is it's a booster draft. So everybody start. You end up you spend 12 or 13 or $14. You get 3 boosters worth of cards at the end of the night, and you get to play in a tournament. You get to have some fun. We could play a little bit to get you back in shape.
Yeah, right. I'd have to like remember the rules first.
The rules are easy. Anyway,
Yeah. No, they were pretty easy from what I remember, and we played
they
quite a
are.
bit of it back in high school.
And they've simply you'd pick it up again really quick.
Yeah, I have not touched it since.
We should do some Magic on a game night, I think. Although I don't feel like hosting game night anytime soon, if I'm honest. It's too much fucking work. Um, yeah, I just made the podcast E-rated for explicit.
You did that like 15 minutes ago.
I know I
Maybe you
did that
missed it.
already. So no, I remember. I'm just making sure it's got curses in it. So yeah, so I'm silly. I've sunk money into Magic again, but I'm okay with that. And I don't even need to do side IT work to afford it. So there you go.
There you go. Tie back.
So that's what's up with me. And
Cool.
Josh goes back to college on the 27th, and then we'll be down to 3 people living in the house at that point. Me, Sharon, and our daughter Tori, plus the dogs.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I did have one more thing I wanted to talk about before we got to the news, and that's this crazy idea I had.
Crazy.
So the show is long. We know it's long. It's
It
usually
can
about
be.
2 hours.
Yeah.
It is very clearly divided into two main parts. There's the main topic, and then there's like the chat and the news. I guess you could say
Everything
three main
else.
parts. But the chat and the news
Yeah.
really kind of run together, right? Because they're all kind of the same content, where it's just us kind of bantering about whether it's chat
Definitely bantering.
or like newsy stuff. I've been considering releasing the show, same content, that won't change, right? Because I've tried for a long time to try to rein it down to a 1 to 1.5 hour show, and it just doesn't work. We cannot cover the content the way you guys think we should cover it, or the way you guys have come to expect us to cover it, and still shorten the show. So either we'd have to drop some content, or we need to do something else. And the something else I'm considering is cutting the show in half. We record it just like we do on show night, just like you're seeing tonight. And then when I edit it, I will cut it into 2 shows. There will be a main topic show, and then there will be a chat and news show, right? And then if you don't care about the chat and the news, you don't have to listen to it. If you don't care about the main topic, you don't have to listen to it. You can listen to one or the other, or you can listen to both. And I'm curious what listeners think of that. So if you're watching live, go ahead and let us know in the chat. There's only like 1 or 2 of you. If you're listening after the fact, hit us up on social media, either Iron Sysadmin on Twitter.
HMU.
Yeah, HMU. Or on Facebook, it's just look for the page for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Or you can send us an email at podcast@ironsysadmin.com. That'll come to
Live
me.
journal.
There's no live journal, sorry. Or if you're part of our Discord group, I had already brought it up there, and people were sort of mixed.
If you're part of what group?
The Discord.
Thank you.
That group. Anyway, I just want to know, right? Do people think that's a bad idea? Do you not care? You'll listen to both. You listen to one or the other. The whole idea is to make the show a little more digestible for new viewers, listeners, right? So if they want to listen to If they've never heard us before and they come to our listing on iTunes or whatever, and they see it's a 2.5-hour show, that's a time investment, right? So I'm trying to make it a little more digestible, especially for new folks. You'll still get all the content; it'll just be broken in half. So let me know what you guys think, because honestly, what I do not want to do is like put off user or listeners that we've already got, because you guys are important to us. New listeners are great. I want to bring in new listeners, but I also don't want to ruin the show for the folks who've been loyal for so long. So I want your feedback.
Nope.
Let me know what you think.
I don't know if I'd listen to it if I weren't on it.
See what I mean?
Pretty friggin' long, and I don't
See?
have. But I'm not. If I'm honest, hand to heart, there's hand on heart. I'm not really actively listening to any podcasts right now because I'm not ever commuting.
Yeah,
That's
so
usually when I would listen.
I have noticed listenership or downloads, which is really the only thing I can track, go down since the start of the pandemic. And I think
It's
that's
not
because
surprising.
people aren't commuting. They're not commuting, right? So
And I just don't. I don't listen to podcasts in the middle of the day, if I'm honest.
Neither do I. I don't usually listen to podcasts and work because speech and working don't jive as
It's
much.
a direct conflict for the job you and I do, right?
Right.
Because if I'm thinking about a problem, I'm not the talking is just noise at that point, and I'm wasting my time.
Yep.
And if I'm listening to a podcast, I can't focus on the work problem I'm trying to solve.
So usually when I'm
Different
working,
than music.
When I'm working, I listen to music. Right. I don't listen to podcasts. If I'm out for a walk, I'll sometimes lin to podcasts. But I got to be honest, I don't walk 3 hours a day like I used to commute. So.
Yeah. So it's ironic that the very podcast I contribute to is not one that I'd probably listen to if I were just a listener.
Right. So, folks, I'm just looking for opinions. If you think that's a horrible idea and you're like, I won't listen to your show anymore if you do that, let me know.
I don't think they're going to say that.
I can't picture it as being that big of a hindrance to your ability to listen to the show. I know of another show that tried it, and their listeners went crazy, and they had to switch back. I don't want to do that. So let me know what you think. And with that, I think we're going to move on to the news. Except I got to switch because it's not this one, right? That's not it.
That works for the news, though.
Sure. That goes on for too long. All right, so here we go.
Push the button, Frank.
So, news. We don't have a ton of news tonight.
Well, that means I might get some Bloodborne in after the show.
You might. I think we're still going to go till... we're going to go till 10 just to bother you.
Oh.
It is almost 9 already. You realize that even though we thought the show was going to be shorter, it's still going to be 2 hours.
It's not going to be shorter. That's fine. Yeah, I have some 140s. 147 on the recording, but some of that's dead time.
Yeah. We're looking at minimum hour-and-a-half show, unless we get through the news really quick.
That's fine.
All right. So, the first news article here.
This is the cobbler whose children are barefoot situation.
The cobbler whose children are barefoot?
Isn't the cobbler the guy who makes shoes? Or is that the delicious? Yeah. So Accenture,
like Pete's cobbler,
who write white papers on how not to get ransomware, got ransomware.
Right. Okay. Now I see where you're going.
Now do you see where I'm going?
Sorry, I'm still working on opening the links for the news, which is exactly what I should have been doing back at our break.
It's like finding out the guy who is writing your weight loss program is 200 pounds overweight.
Right. So yeah, Accenture, who so this is from CNN, by the way, the news article. They've been hit with some ransomware, and now we see this all the time, right? Someone gets hit with ransomware. Oh no, we're not going to pay the ransom. We're not going to pay the ransom. We totally got it back, and then we find out later that they paid the ransom. So there's a follow-on comment / article from Slashdot, which is also in the show notes. But apparently, Accenture was hit by, what was their name? I saw it here a minute ago. Lockbit. The Lockbit ransomware gang, right? So these folks hit them however they got in. They got hit with ransomware. Ransomware has locked up data of Accenture's. Accenture doesn't want to pay the ransom. They claim they have not paid the ransom as far as I've found online so far. They've started to restore stuff from backup. They say there has not been a huge impact to business, but the follow-on article from Slashdot suggests that the dark web now has some of Accenture's private business data posted for sale, or maybe just posted as public. So, yeah, not good stuff for Accenture. Good for them for not paying the ransom, but this is the unfortunate downside of, well, not paying the ransom, right? They start to threaten, we're going to share your data if you don't pay the ransom. It's not just giving your data back; it's we're gonna expose your data, and now we're seeing that play out, right? So, a lot of companies aren't willing to go that far. They just pay the ransom and hope for the best. Some of them get their data back, some of them don't. But in this case, Accenture decided, no, we're not going to pay that ransom. And now some of that data is being leaked. So it sucks all around.
Yeah.
I feel like you have a comment that's ready to come out, but I'm not sure.
I have a comment, but I've drunk 2 beers, and everything I say is going to be part of the permanent public record. So I probably shouldn't say anything.
Okay.
There's a handful of companies that are essentially, and we all know who they are. They're essentially your IT body shops, and you get what you pay for. Um, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
So I like to use this as a moment to remind folks that.
But even if you're dealing with very smart people and have an excellent staff, it's still possible to be hit.
Yes, and that's kind of where it's about to go, right? So, even if you think you got all your stuff in order, these folks are good at what they do. I don't mean Accenture. I mean the folks that are maybe Accenture great at what
Yeah,
they do.
let's
I'm
be
not saying
clear.
they're not.
Already.
I'm saying the bad guys,
attackers.
the attackers
Yeah.
are good at what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be successful at doing it, right?
I know some folk who work for Accenture because their positions were sucked up by Accenture and then they were rehired to
Yeah.
work the same role in the company, and they're clever nerds, but
My point is
it's
that
purely a mercenary situation at that point.
that it's not a badge of shame to be hit by ransomware, because these folks,
Sometimes it is.
well, right, sometimes it could have been prevented.
Sometimes you were a dumbass.
Generally, it always could have been prevented. But the thing is, social engineering attacks are meant to prey on your humanity, right? If you do
That's
not
correct.
have humanity, you are probably less likely to be hit.
So
with
you're saying
a
that
fish or
ransomware attacks are not as successful, say, on Vulcan?
Yes. You're probably right.
Mr. Spock has never been deceived by malicious.
It's really
links.
really common for IT professionals or cybersecurity professionals to point at the user and say, "You're dumb. How could you have been tricked by this thing? Because it looks so obvious." Right?
Hey,
well, like Jane in accounting doesn't know that.
Hey,
she's
I
just
got
trying
an
to
email.
get her job done. She's just trying to make sure that business continues, right? Because that's her job, right? So you can't necessarily blame poor Jane from accounting.
No. Yeah, I got an email today that looked like it was from Netflix saying my account was suspended.
Yeah.
And I looked at the header and I'm like, it doesn't look like it's a legit, like the from is legit, but it could also have been, sent through whatever. And hovering over the options were a little bit sus. So I didn't click on the buttons in the email, but I did go to my Netflix account to just verify that
Yep.
that it was still active.
And that's
Like,
the right thing to
maybe
do.
maybe the credit card expired.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was close enough that I'm like, I think this email's garbage, but let me go over to Netflix and double check.
They are getting so good that I
And
have.
I know what to look for.
Right, I have received.
Grandma doesn't.
I have received legitimate emails from places that I do business with, places I've purchased from, or whatever, that I did not trust because I couldn't tell.
Right.
I couldn't tell anymore the difference between a fish and a not fish.
Right.
Because they're getting
Everything
that good.
stinks. Everything's stinky.
Right. Now it's
with
to the
scales.
point where anything that comes into my email inbox that says your credit card has expired or your account is going to be terminated or X or Y or whatever, I immediately suspect.
The only one I trust is the free IP where I have to renew unclemarc.ddns.net every month.
So anyway, my point is, right, it's easy to point fingers at the folks, maybe the folks at Accenture, and say, how could this have happened to you? But the reality is, you only, like, all they need to do is prey on the person who is most willing to help other people. And it's terrible that that is the thing that makes you a target now. The willingness to try to help a customer is now the thing that makes you a vulnerability. That sucks. Like, I'm sorry. What does that tell you about humanity? It really sucks. I don't know how they got into Accenture. Maybe it was a completely stupid move on their part. I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm sure someday we'll find out. Maybe we won't. But if we do find out, we'll cover it on the show. But anyway, that's the latest in the news of folks who have been hit with ransomware. We're going to move on to you remember Tom's Hardware? Man, this site has been around forever. How old is Tom? How long do you think Tom has been around?
That would be a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Tom's Hardware. He was like an overclocking guy back in the 90s. Remember when overclocking was still a thing you could do? I guess you can still do it.
Yeah, but most of it's like I can overclock I've actually got my graphics card a little bit overclocked. You do all of our software now.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be like change some jumpers on your freaking motherboard.
Yeah,
and hope you don't light your CPU on fire.
Yeah, and there's a lot of overclocking. Like NVIDIA now, you can overclock, but a lot of their graphic cards have built-in fail-safes so that if you overclock it too much by mistake, it just doesn't do it.
They didn't used to. It used to be
you used to be able to set shit on fire.
You'd buy a Pentium 133. That's megahertz, folks. You'd buy a Pentium 133, right? And then
not gigahertz, megahertz.
You could overclock it to 166, and then
you
like 200, and then you're like, oh no, it's gonna catch fire.
Well, and you were hoping it wasn't one of the ones that failed QA, right?
Right.
Because often what would happen is that the ones that passed a certain level of QA, they would be sold as the faster chips, and then otherwise they ended up in the this one we know this one can do 133. And maybe it'll work if you overclock it. We don't know. And of course, there were no fail safes, so it was possible to melt it down.
Yeah, you could literally fry your CPU. They did have heat warnings in them, but they didn't shut down. They would just like beep incessantly at you. Anyway,
did they have heat warnings?
The thing that we're actually here to talk about on Tom's Hardware is that Windows 365 is generally available starting at $20 a month. Now you might wonder, what is Windows 365? So you might be familiar with Office 365, which is Office suites in the cloud. Well, take a guess at what Windows 365 is.
It's a Windows desktop that is actually in the cloud,
right.
Which means you need to have a piece of hardware somewhere to access it, because it's basically a VDI, which, by the way, is a terrible way to work on a computer via VDI.
I agree. And this and the next article that I included kind of touch on the same point. And I don't know about you, I get very frustrated working on a mobile device versus a device that has a keyboard and mouse.
I think a mobile device needs to have the proper interface. It's not about shrinking a keyboard to fit on a mobile device. It's got to have an interface that you can work with naturally.
Right. But I mean, even still, like even Android and iOS, right? They're both, you could argue, depending on who you are, they both have decent UIs, right? For what they do.
Sure.
But things like typing up an email or a Word doc on my phone
Super frustrating.
is utterly frustrating because I have a full keyboard to fight with. Or I could do speech to text, I suppose.
Oh, but speech to text is it gets embarrassing sometimes,
it's
and I get
marginal at
tired of
best,
fighting
right?
with it.
So speech
And
to
I
text,
never, ever, 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 I never actually meant to say ducking.
right? And so like
Please.
there's different keyboard input types like swipe. I don't know if iPhone has that, but Android does, where you can swipe a word by
Well,
by
so
swiping to each of the letters, and
the
half the
Apple
time,
Watch has a thing where you can do like the shorthand swiping,
yeah,
like in a text.
right. But like
So like, yeah.
my point is, none of them are entirely accurate enough. They're not as fluid as simply sitting at a keyboard and typing out what I want to type.
Not
Right?
at all.
So, this whole move to mobile computing, and I don't mean mobile like laptops, I mean like mobile like this thing in my pocket, which I'm going to talk, I'm trying not to talk too much on how big cell phones are getting because that'll be in the next article. But the idea that I would want to use my phone or a tablet as a replacement for my laptop is ridiculous, if you ask me. And that's really, in my opinion, from a consumer standpoint, that's what Windows 365 is going to get you. It's going to get you the ability to put your computer in the cloud and access it from anything, which is cool. Don't get me wrong, that's a cool idea. But I think the implementation is going to be really, really important. How are you going to do that? Just getting to a remote desktop session of a Windows 10 or I guess 11 PC from my mobile device is going to suck. I'm not even touching on the lack of general purpose computing that we're all going to have in our homes if this becomes the norm, right? So my cell phone will do the things it's programmed to do. My laptop will do whatever the hell I want it to, right? If I'm adequately skilled at programming and whatnot, my laptop will do whatever the hell I want it to do. My phone does not. My tablet does not, because they are consumer devices that are made to do a thing. Anyway, I'll try not to get on that soapbox too high at this point, but
I remember a few years ago there was talk of having what essentially would have been a cell phone, uh, and it would project a holographic keyboard down on the desk,
I remember that.
and then project a screen on like the cubicle wall or whatever flat surface there,
Mm-hmm.
and and that's that would be how you'd essentially have a laptop and a phone. And I forget whether it actually worked or whether it was like a fancy artist conception or
So
whether they ever able to prototype that stuff out.
even still, I think with a projected keyboard, you'd still have the same problem that you do with an on-screen keyboard, and that is there's no tactile feedback.
No, you'd be tapping on the desk,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah. Now the keys would be bigger targets, so maybe you'd
It'd be
have
easier.
fewer errors.
It'd
Yeah.
be easier, but you
But
wouldn't
you're
have
right.
the tactile feedback
You
of a
wouldn't have that.
keyboard,
And
which would
I'm the
mean
guy
that
who
you're
intentionally
prone.
buys mechanical keyboards,
Oh yeah.
as
Yeah.
I believe you are.
Yeah.
I'm a dinosaur. I believe that my preferred computer experience is a computer at a desk. I mean, I've learned to adapt certain computing habits to the cell phone, and then like I said on our last show, I really love the Apple Watch for what it does. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's an edge device for my phone, which sounds insane. Like who the hell would need an edge device for what's essentially an edge device? But when you're using it, it just makes sense.
I heard you
It
like
makes
edge
sense.
devices, so we put an edge device on your
So we
edge
put an edge
device.
device on your
Yeah.
edge device. Yeah. And edge is honestly one of those annoying buzzwords that I wish would die in a fire, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
But when it works. Now, maybe some of that's because Apple just is fantastic at their user experience. I don't know. If this were some crappy third party knockoff, maybe I wouldn't be so into it. Um,
So
but yeah,
anyway, if you want to use Windows 10 or 11 in the cloud, they
I,
do say 10 or 11. I thought 11 wasn't released yet.
well, I
Maybe
don't know.
maybe
I
11's
don't care.
coming next. I don't know. But anyway, it is Windows 365.
So you basically can rent a virtual desktop.
You could rent a computer.
running in Azure somewhere.
Rent a virtual computer. Go have
But
fun
you
with
still
the
need to
computer.
run it on a computer
Well, that's the
or
thing, right?
something.
You can run it on
Like,
almost anything, which is kind of what almost any device they say. So you can
so I
fire
could
up your
use my
tablet
really
and use it.
expensive gaming computer to run a VDI.
Right.
Obviously, that's stupid. I
Right.
guess maybe if you got a crappy Chromebook, and
Right.
how well do these VDIs perform? Can you do gaming on them, or are they just are they themselves, or is it a piece of
I
garbage?
think you know the answer to that.
I think I do know the
Because
answer to
how's it
that.
going to get that display back to you? Now, there are some advancements in game streaming, right? That is gameplay
I
streaming.
You know what? I use
So,
PlayStation Remote Play.
yeah,
I play my PS4 on this all the time, streaming across my network,
yeah.
and it's pretty solid.
You know what? Um, I got
And I know you're one of the
into
3 people who bought Stadia,
right. I was
so
just going to say I
you
got
know
into
that
Google
can work.
Stadia early, and
Is that still a thing?
a lot of people complained about it, but I got to say it was very playable. I
Is
shouldn't
it
say
still a
was. It's
thing, or
still
did it
around.
fold over?
I have not played it, but it is showing
Are you still paying
signs.
for it?
No, I stopped paying for it about
Okay.
8 months ago because I wasn't playing it enough to warrant paying for it. Anyway, what was I trying to say? It's showing
I don't know.
signs that it may not be long lived because, Google.
Well, it's a Google product.
Yeah. But so apparently Google opened their own game studio along with Stadia because the intention was that they were either going to port or create games for Stadia themselves.
Yeah. How's that
And
working out for
that
them?
closed. They closed that game
Yeah.
studio. So a lot of people are
Big
like, see,
surprise.
they're going to turn off Stadia. Don't use Stadia. And they might be right. I don't know. I still think it's a really neat idea. The idea that you just have this little Chromecast and you have your controller. And the controllers are very
Sure.
nice. If Stadia closed
It's very
tomorrow,
nice.
I still have a Chromecast Ultra, which is actually a pretty nice streaming device, and I still have these two Stadia controllers, which are very nice, and I can plug in USB and use as a game controller for anything.
I
So I
love
don't
the
feel like I
lemonade you're
wasted my
making
money.
out of this.
What's
And
that?
and I love the lemonade you're making here, and I really actually mean that. That's fantastic.
Well, no, they really are nice controllers, right? And they work on my RetroPie.
That's a great positive mental attitude.
Yeah, right. Anyway, the controllers, if you consider the cost of a PlayStation controller, which is like $60, these are easily on par with that. I didn't waste
Yeah,
any money.
PlayStation controllers are pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
You sure have you used a PlayStation
Oh
controller?
no, I'm not saying PlayStation controllers are not great. They are awesome controllers.
PlayStation controllers are probably the best gaming controller you'll ever find.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
they're amazing.
Which also work with RetroPie.
They do. This one's plugged into my. I have two. I bounce them in between the PS4 and the gaming rig
Yeah,
because
I have PlayStation 3 controllers that I use for that.
then
And
you know the quality of PlayStation controllers.
oh yeah, they're great. I have a PS3 and a PS4. They're great controllers.
I
They're
asked
awesome.
you if you used a PS4 controller or a PlayStation controller, and you said no.
I didn't say no.
Oh, okay. Wait, you own a PS4?
I own both a PS3 and a PS4.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And a PlayStation if it matters. That's up in the attic somewhere.
Yeah. So you can play Bloodborne.
I could. Anyway, back to the news. I have one more article, and it's really in the same vein.
I thought that was the folding phone. I thought we already touched that.
Well, we kind of touched it, but I didn't really talk about the folding phone.
The folding phone is stupid.
So this comes from, and this is exactly my point. That's why I include it, because we've talked about this before on the show when I think it was Samsung was doing folding phones. It was like the Samsung
I remember
Galaxy
hearing
Fold.
that as a listener.
Right.
I was not on that show. It's a stupid
The
idea.
Digital Trends says...
Just get a laptop.
What? Just get a laptop.
Just get a laptop.
Digital Trends, this is apparently a news site, I don't know.
Cranky old
They're going on about how a Pixel Fold is exactly what's needed to make Pixel phones exciting. And they even have a heading down here about how folding phones are exciting.
I read the article, and it was the guy sounded like a ridiculous, stupid cheerleader.
Yeah, I don't feel like folding phones are all that exciting. I want to hear from the listeners, though, folks. Are you excited about folding phones?
I'm not going to say it was the dumbest article I've ever read, but it was pretty dumb.
I think folding phones are a terrible idea. Unless your goal is to have no device but your phone, right? Then I can see a use for the largest screen you can possibly manage, right? I don't think a folding phone is the way to do that, though, because these phones are already designed to be
Phone should fit in your pocket.
like thrown away after 3 or 4 years, right? Now, some of us don't use them that way. I know you don't, Mark. You had your last phone for longer than 3 or 4 years, I think, and then it fell in a lake or something.
I actually upgraded to the next model up, so I didn't have the 10R for. I fell into the trap. It's a trap.
It's a
So
trap.
this is I think an 11.
So I have a Pixel 4. I didn't rush out and buy the Pixel 5 when it came out. I'm not going to rush out and buy the Pixel 6 when it comes out. I have been going down the road of should I be using iPhone again, but I'm really
The answer to that is yes.
Yeah, right, but I don't want to go and divest myself in Android again and invest in iPhone again because it was a pain in the butt last time.
Well, then just do it. Just come back to the proper phone and then just stay there.
But anyway, my point is, this article is implying that in fact, they flat out say that the Pixel 5 was an awesome phone, but boring. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't need my smartphone to be exciting. I need it to work.
I would agree.
Like, this should not be exciting.
No.
Exciting is what you get out of your game system or that sports car you bought, not your phone.
I would agree.
Your phone just needs to work. Your phone needs to be a thing that you pick up, and it's a utility. It's an appliance. You can make phone calls on it. You can check your mail on it. You can argue on Facebook on it. It doesn't need... Like, what else you need it to do? Like, why is a folding screen make it exciting?
It doesn't.
I don't get it. Yeah. Folding smartphones are exciting. It's a heading, man. It's a heading in the article. It has to be true. It's in bright blue. Not bright blue. It's like this very...
Maybe I'm just tired and a little tipsy, but I found the article super stupid.
I agree. That's why I included it. You may have noticed that sometimes I include articles that I disagree with just so we can talk about them.
Well, that worked.
Anyway, I don't get it. I don't get the folding phone thing. Maybe it's because I'm getting to be an old man.
Just embrace it, man. Embrace the yelling at the kids to get off your lawn.
Embrace the fold. I had a folding phone 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's...
It had a screen that was this big.
Yeah. Oh, man.
What's old is new again, except now it's going to be more fraught with peril. That's the thing, right? So, like, for me, the Galaxy Fold, which is the one that we've talked about several times before, one, it was twice as expensive as a normal smartphone. Because it was effectively two smartphones.
It's got twice as much screen.
Folded
and that's the expensive part.
And it had problems where at the hinge, like dust particles and stuff would get in there, and then the screen would crack.
Yeah.
Right? That's the exact thing that I was worried about when they started talking about folding smartphones. Yeah, that's what I friggin' want. Right? So, unless they solve those things, and I imagine they will, as technology does.
Spoiler alert, they probably haven't.
They make it better as they go, but I don't know. I don't see a reason for it. I do not see a reason for a folding phone other than we need the biggest screen possible, regardless of usefulness or price. And I think it's silly. Folks, if you think I'm wrong, let us know. I want to hear from you. All right, and with that,
I think... what would impress me? If Google could make the Play-Doh phone, where it comes in a ball, and then you just smush it out and you roll it into the size you want it to be. You do what you're doing on it, and then you squeeze it back into a ball again and put it in your pocket. That would impress me.
So, it's not quite the Play-Doh phone, but there was a point where Google was toying with this thing they called Project Aria, which then became Phone Blocks, or maybe it was the other way around. Phone Blocks became Project Aria, where it was a phone, but it was a frame. You bought the frame, whatever form factor you wanted. And then all the different modules, like the camera and whatnot, would snap into it, right?
I'm talking more like T1000
no, I get that.
level of
I get
flexibility.
That. You're a little ahead of technology at the moment. But I thought the idea was great because
I'm a thought leader, yeah.
It meant stuff like your battery, your camera, and whatever were all modules that could be replaced or upgraded as you went along.
And that aspect is cool, and that's something that's what you don't get in the Apple ecosystem.
Like many Google projects, it died.
It died.
So unfortunately, we never got Phone Blocks or Project Aria, even though I thought it was a really cool idea. What we did get, however, and I wanted to put this in the announcements or in news or chat or something, we've talked about these framework laptops that are meant to be user serviceable and repairable, and they have the same concept where a lot of the peripherals
Yeah,
are
that's
snap
in the That's in the Discord
It
channel.
is in the Discord.
People want to look.
Discord. But it's pretty neat. They're out now. They are released. You can go buy one now. I
Nice.
gotta say, I'm tempted.
Tempted by the fruit of another.
So maybe one day I'll buy
tempted
one.
by
I don't know.
the
We'll see.
another.
We'll see how the other consumers do with them before I go ahead and invest any money in one. But I can't afford one now. Anyway, after buying a stupid fridge, freaking
Stupid refrigerator.
domesticated crap. Anyway, I think we're done for tonight. Did we cover the news well enough? I think we covered
I
the news
think
well
we
enough.
should be done. Yeah.
All right, folks. I think
We're
we're
good.
done. If you want to watch this train wreck live, you can do so
Woo
on the second and fourth
Chugga, chugga, chugga,
Thursday
chugga,
of
chugga,
every
chugga,
month.
chugga, 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 chugga,
Find
chugga,
us at
chugga,
YouTube
chugga,
or
chugga,
Twitch.
chugga,
Just look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast.
Live
You can
journal.
join our Discord community if
MySpace.
you'd like. You can find the link in the show notes or on ironsysadmin.com. You can find us on the socials, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. And, of course, you can subscribe wherever you normally find podcasts.
Subscribe.
And as I always say, if you can't find us where you normally get podcasts, let us know, because we'll go get ourselves added
Let us
there.
know.
I'm sure there's somewhere that you can't find the Iron Sysadmin podcast.
Yeah, so next show's the 26th, and then I'm taking the next day off and taking the boy to college.
Yeah, so theoretically, next
Back
show
to
we'll have J-Scar on to talk about DEF CON,
college.
if anybody's interested in DEF CON.
Yeah, and Josh, my son, was like, "Oh, I'm sorry I can't be on the Iron Sysadmin tonight. I know you thought about me coming on at some point to talk about emulation and stuff." So
Oh. If
We
you'd
had
like to
toyed
come
with
on,
that
you can
idea at
certainly
one
do
point.
that.
yeah,
All right, so anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I think, we'll catch you in the next one as soon as I find the show's over pane here.
The
Here it is.
show's
All right.
overvain.
Good night, folks. Have a good one.
Peace.